Good evening, everyone. My name is Tu Uyên, and on behalf of Group 1, I am honored to start our today's presentation of Chapter 6, Assessing Listening. The presentation will include four main parts. Firstly, some cautionary observations on assessing language skills separately. Secondly, basic types of listening. Thirdly, micro and macro skills of listening. And finally, how to design listening assessment tasks. Now, we will pay close attention to the first part. In this section, we will together try to find the answer for these three questions. Can we assess any one skill in isolation without the participation of at least one other skill? How do grammar and vocabulary fit into the assessment of the skills? And can we directly observe the performance of all four skills? Let's take a deeper look at the first question. On the one hand, in our everyday language performance, single skill use appears in a few authentic manifestations, such as listening to radio, read a book, or deliver a speech. On the other hand, in the classroom activities and in assessing language in the classroom, skills integration must always be a priority in order to achieve the authenticity of language in its stimulation of real-world communication. Please note that the reason for examining the skills separately in this book is simply to provide clear organizers to identify principles, test types, tasks, and issues associated with each skill. Let's move to the second question. How do grammar and vocabulary fit into the assessment of the skills? Firstly, any test of grammar or vocabulary invokes two or more of the separate skills of listening, speaking, reading, or writing. Secondly, a communicative language teaching approach emphasizes spontaneous communication, implicitly focusing on form for perhaps most minutes of a classroom hour. Lastly, many standardized tests might be so focused on form that the test specifications incorporate little evidence of authenticity and real-world communication. Therefore, grammar and vocabulary shouldn't be assessed independently. And can we directly observe the performance of all four skills? When you propose to assess someone's ability in one or a combination of the four skills, you assess that person's competence, but you observe the person's performance. The first important principle for assessing a learner's competence is to consider the fallibility of the results of a single performance, because some elements will affect the performance, such as a bad night's rest, illness, or an emotional distraction. Therefore, as a teacher, we should consider at least two performances before drawing a conclusion. The second principle is we must rely as much as possible on observable performance, both the process and the product, in our assessment of students. The productive skills allow us to hear and see the process and the product as we are performed, but receptive skills. Therefore, all receptive performance must be assessed by inference. Now, I will shed light on four common types of listening performance. In intensive listening, listeners focus on the components of a stretch of language, such as phonemes, words, intonation, and so on. Listening to a relatively short stretch of language in order to make an equal short response is defined as responsive listening. Selective listening is processing stretches of discourse to skim for certain information. For instance, listening for names, numbers, or certain facts and events. Extensive listening is to develop a top-down global understanding of spoken language. Listening for gist and making inferences are all part of extensive listening. Test takers need to invoke interactive skills to achieve full comprehension. In particular, listening performance must be intricately integrated with speaking or other skills in the authentic give and take of communicative interchange. And to have a better listening performance, teachers should consider a finite number of micro and macro skills implied in the performance of listening comprehension. Micro skills attend to the small bits and chunks of language in more of a bottom-up process. And macro skills focus on the large elements involved in a top-down approach to a listening task. You can find further information on page 135. This taxonomy gives us a sense of which aspects of listening performance are predictably difficult, and then help teachers to challenge students appropriately and assign weights to items. The list of what makes listening difficult might include clustering, stress, rhythm, intonation, reduced forms, performance variables, etc. You can find more details on page 136 or look at the handout. Now we will join the fourth part to understand how to design assessment tasks. Let's welcome Ms. Huai Mi.